growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everybody, Dr. Steve Rasner here, and welcome to the 2022 edition of the Lionhearted Dental Podcast. Welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to take you into the new year. I have some good stuff I want to talk about tonight, and I think you're going to be very happy about it. I'm all ready for my podcast. As you can see, my cat is in the background. I have my water spray bottle necessary in case things get out of control with my felines. I have 3 cats, by the way. Always been a dog guy, but I've been living in a condo for 10 plus years in Philadelphia, and it's just hard to take my dog down in the elevator at 6 in the morning, etc. But that's not why you tuned in. I hope everybody's ready for the best year you ever had, because I'm going to help you get there. And I want to start with a subject that I like sharing with you. I'm not sure that you like it, but by the looks of my downloaded podcast each month, it seems like some of you definitely like it. And my style, if you're tuning in for the first time, is kind of calling it like it is, telling you what I really think you need to maximize your potential in dentistry. And why wouldn't you want to do that? So here's the thing. You know, last year, there were several podcasts called the $24,000 Monday, the $130,000 3-day week, the blah, blah, blah. And I hope you know by now that I don't entitle that or talk about that for any other reason except to tie them in to the Lionhearted dental protocols that I share each week to show you how they result in extraordinary outcomes. And sitting here in my hand tonight is a new one, and it has a twist to it, and it's my schedule from Tuesday of this past week. So let me set the table for you. We're going to call this the $47,000 Tuesday, which, by the way, means that's what I collected from patient treatment. What makes this particular story worth sharing with you is that on this Tuesday, it followed a Monday. I'm on the East Coast of the United States, and we got snowed out on Monday. So that's another story I want to talk about in a minute. But on this particular day, the second day of the week, I had both of my doctors out. One was stuck in Florida on a holiday vacation she took. And all of us know right now, between the unbelievable spread of the latest variant of COVID and that it just ravaged the workforce, and between weather here on the eastern United States, there have been lots and lots of obstacles and cancellations. But mostly, the latest variant of COVID has absolutely rained havoc on all businesses, including ours, of course. And it got to me. And remember, I'm trying to get off to a good start in this new year. And Monday was blown out. I mean, nobody could come. And I'm going to talk about those type of obstacles during this podcast. But on the next day of the new year, I have both doctors out. One with COVID, one stuck in another state. They can't get a flight back. 4 assistants out. Snow, COVID, 4 assistants out, 2 doctors out, just myself. And by the way, a moth-eaten schedule. So when I walk in to begin at 9 o'clock, my first patient was a post-op evaluation after I placed 6 implants about a month ago. Second patient, I like to give you like a flavor for what we do each day, was a post-op of a free gingival graft I had done pre-holiday, so I guess 3 weeks ago. And my first really productive patient. So just so you know, we schedule for new production in my office 9 to about 3. And from 3 thereon, which is usually 1 patient, I include what I call non-productive work. That's something I have to fix, redo, benevolent, gratuitous care, all under the heading of it doesn't bring any revenue or production to the office. But it's certainly part, in my opinion, of a busy perioprosthetic type of practice, which many of you run as well as I do. So we try to be all new production from 9 through 3, and maybe sometimes it varies a little bit at the end of the day. And then I add one patient that I have to do or I feel compelled to do. Implants can fail. Crown and bridge can fail. All these would come under that umbrella. And on this day, my first productive patient of the day had COVID, like many of yours. So how does a $47,000 collection day, I only worked till 4:30 that day. How did that happen? And I'm going to tell you that. And as I tell you that, I want you to tie together the systems that I'm tying this to how it happened, because it's just the truth. I'm not coming on here telling you about 47 grand because I never had it before. I've had many days like that. I thought it was pretty extraordinary on this particular day when the day was said and done, and I took some notes about it. So it's really always everything, every week, every day you have is really about two things. One is, how bad do you want success? I've asked you that before, and you just really have to be honest about it. Maybe, you're lukewarm about it. Whatever level of success you presently have may be enough for you. Guess what? Don't do anything about it then. Live your life to your fullest and just be happy, because there's nothing wrong with that, man. It would tell me that you're probably not an overspender. You probably bought a house commensurate with your income, which is fabulous, and cars and all the other things that go with that. I mean this. I'm totally sincere. I know that most of you that listen to me have much greater potential than you have realized. You have not come close to your potential. And you want to know how to improve it. I get it. And I'm glad you're listening to me whenever you do. By the way, thank you, UK. I know I say this every podcast. It's unbelievable. I don't know that you're doing that just to reinforce what I say the last couple months, but it's amazing how, I don't know if it's 5 of you or many of you, but it's making me happy. Have me over there. I'll come over there and I'll do a live, just like I said I want to do here in the United States, a live Lionhearted. That'd be cool. So let's get back to how it happened. It always comes down to how bad you want it. I said 2 things. It's more than 2. How bad do you want success? How bad do you value the success of every day? Let me give you an example. You're going to hate me, especially the staff, on this throwback thing that I used to do. Whenever my team would talk about, Doc, it's summer. That's what's wrong with the schedule. That's why the hygiene schedule fell apart. It's summer. Everybody's on vacation. It'll get better when they get back to school in September. Not. I don't want to hear that. Doc, it's Christmas. Everybody's thinking about their Christmas prep. No, you are wrong. It is Christmas. And it is summer once a year. Or how about this? You'll hate me on this. It's snowing. Let's cancel. You think they have the same cancellation policy in Montana that they have in, let's say, New Jersey if it snows? I think not. I think that many offices in the Dakotas, in Minnesota, in Montana, do go to work if it snows within reason. Why is it that a few flurries, let's be more relevant, that 2 inches of snow causes your office to shut down? I'll tell you why. Because that's a reason for a lot of people not to go to work. I said you wouldn't like this. You know what we used to do? We would have a skeleton staff who have appropriate vehicles. If you have 2 people in your staff and they both drive Priuses, okay, I guess you're out. But one of the advantages of having a little bit bigger staff than 2 is a lot of people in the last 20 years seem to have an SUV seemed to have Jeeps. And I would make sure that the one person that had the Jeep would pick up the other staff that didn't have that and bring them to the office. You hate me now? I don't do it as much anymore, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. But that was my solution to snow. We didn't call out with snow. Those of the staff members that are, their blood pressure is going through the roof right now as you're hearing me, thinking I'm an ogre and, oh my God, this guy can never relax. I can relax, but I have 4 measly days a week in this business I put together to produce dentistry, to pay my team, to pay the bills. And if I take one of them off or close easily, it leaves me less days to do that. So that's more pressure. So I would have real dedicated staff members. We would talk about that in the interview. Like, we don't close if it's an inch or two of snow. And I'm telling you, it was just never a problem. As I got later in my career, by the way, that's not the theme of this podcast. What do you do about snow days? No. I'm just giving you a level of commitment that I had to stay open. I did. And as I went later in my career, what I did is I would close down with snow, even if it was a couple inches, because I couldn't get the patients to show up. And not all the time. I couldn't get enough consistent patient base. But I'm just trying to make the point to you that, no, we don't all close down equally for weather. It depends partly on how bad you want it. How bad you want to maintain that day you work so hard for the last 3 weeks to put together. But what we do, I'll tell you the truth what we do. Michelle will call the patients as early as can be, 7 o'clock in the morning. And if we know there's weather, we tell them we're going to call them. And we try to schedule or make adjustments in the schedule, because you know it's true. You know that you have patients that'll come in anything almost a tornado, right? I mean, you know this. There are patients that are just diehards. And we would generally work on those patients. Probably the hygiene schedules fell apart or had half days. I don't recall. But this is an important attitude that I wanted to get into for a minute that I didn't intend to on this podcast. This podcast was intended to tell you how to have such a big day on the day despite the obstacles. And I'm going to get to that. But it's the same thing with the summer. I remember hearing, it's the summertime, doc. That's what's wrong. No, it's that we didn't prepare enough prior to the summer. So how did we do that? We started gearing up in March and April for every summer by really scheduling a little heavier in hygiene, anticipating more breaks than we usually get the rest of the year. And I would drill into my team's head that it's a mind game with you. If you think, any of you know somebody in your life that says, gosh, every August I get the flu. And they do. Every August they come down with the flu. Well, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I know some of you probably have turned me off at this point in this particular podcast. I'm dead serious, man. It's like being an elite athlete, and I've talked about that. You have to prepare not to fail. And it is easier to fail with consistent hygiene schedules in the summer. So start preparing in the spring. Now, that's one thing you're hearing from me right this second. It's a very another 2 months from now. We're in January. 3 months from now is to have a team meeting and say, let's try what Rasner said. Let's try a Lionhearted cornerstone protocol, and let us try to prepare like he said. Maybe a market heavier in the spring so that you have an influx of newer and bigger cases. Maybe you ought to expand. I would give you a 5-point plan if you asked me to. That's what I would do. And the same thing with Christmas. I think if you put your mind to it, you can overcome any season as an objection as to why you're not busy enough. If you invite it in and accept it, it will defeat you. And guys, you have the same thing I have. You have whatever it is, 48 out of the 52 weeks a year, however many weeks you take off, they all count. And staff members that are listening to this one tonight, here's the problem. Maybe your boss drives a nice car, but when your boss is off, when the doctor's off, we don't get paid. And the bills don't change. He's never going to be able to say to his team, nor should he be able to, hey, we got a little problem here with payroll coming up this week. Remember the 2 snow days last week? Or remember the hygiene schedule fell apart last? No, your doctor can't say that. So it creates an enormity of responsibility and pressure to be as consistent from January 1 to December 30th each year. I keep saying this because I care about you guys and I want you to like me. But I don't want you to like me enough to not tell you how I got to where I'm at. And so I'm reading notes off my notes, and I wanted to talk about that. But it's about how bad you want it. It's how committed the team that's in your office when you open the door on Monday is to embracing what you believe in. So let me give you an example and how it's related to this day. So we walked in on a Tuesday, and I told you I lost the Monday. And I'm starting to think, God, it's 2 days. I'm only worked 4 days this week. I'm only going to work Monday through Thursday. I already lost one of them. And so what happened? Well, how committed was my team? There was hygiene cancellations. I have seen when I have changed over front desk teams in my career, the difference in commitment by those staff members and what they understand about never giving in to failure. And I have soldiers. You know what the very first place that the front desk team needs to look when there's hygiene cancellations? Tell me. Do you get on the phone and just start randomly doing recall? Of course not. Most of you probably know this, but you look within your office. Is there anybody in the office this particular day that wasn't in hygiene that is overdue for hygiene? Now, this is all tied together because I run an operation, and I've encouraged you to, that will accept no less than immaculate recommendations for our patients' perio. So what I mean by that is my hygienists generally do not come back to me and say, I really thought he needed quads. And I told him if his mouth doesn't look better next time, we're going to have to talk about quadrant scaling root. No, that is not acceptable. Your doctors, your providers. Is that what they do in the hospital when diabetes is out of control? When heart disease is out of control? Your doctors, your healthcare providers. I'm talking to you, Hygiene, right now. No, it's not your responsibility to, I know, but they hate that. And they don't like the scaling root plan. And it cost them more, and they just had it 2 years. Are you kidding me? Look, having a compassionate personality and being sensitive to everything about our patients, including what they owe, is a part of being successful. But you have to draw a line. So I generally always have patients somewhere in my office, inoperative or whatever, who may have not completed the post-scaling root planing hygiene visit, the post-prophy that we do at the end. Or somebody for a myriad of reasons because sometimes I demand that they have hygiene first, and sometimes it's allowable that we're doing some of the operative. Obviously, we're not going to do crown and bridge in a sea of inflammation. I get that. And most of my patients are complete by then. But it's not an odd thing in my practice to have patients in the office that we could slide over if we had to. I might have to adjust my schedule. And one more thing. It's an advantage that I never said to you before, but there's a great another advantage of having a practice that relies heavily on sedating their patients, because it is no big deal to a sedated patient who is basically given up half their day because they really can't sedate and go out shopping after they are in your office. So we often do that. We will call the ride that dropped them off and say, listen, we have an opportunity to get additional work done on James. He was in today for a couple extractions, but we can do an additional quadrant scaling on him, blah, blah, blah. And so the front desk team, being committed to wanting a full schedule, B, to be trained by you to be looking how to solve these problems that do come up throughout the year, and certainly were with me on this particular day. And then the next thing, and probably the last thing I'm going to be able to talk about with respect to this particular day, is this is right after the holidays. We had a number of orange sheets. Do you know what that means? So I've told you in other podcasts that when I get emergency calls, the data is recorded in a very organized way on the problem that the patient called with. Like, it's not a random, oh, you have a toothache? Let me check and see when we have an opening. That is not what we do. And if you don't and can't locate, just call it an orange emergency patient sheet. What it means is it's not a patient that's never been to you. It's a patient that is a patient of record that has a problem that they felt the need to call you on this day. It's one of my protocols, by the way. And so a trained front desk team that's gone through the Lionhearted type of training would know the following. They would know what's the history of this patient. So understand this. On this day, because it followed a holiday that we had been closed for a week, we had multiple calls. That's not unusual, right? If you have a pretty big practice and you've been out for 4 or 5 days or whatever it is, you walk in, it's not unusual to have multiple orange sheets. These orange sheets are neon bright orange by design from me. And the reason they are is because when I walk past my front desk, I'm not walking behind the computers to look. It gets the attention of my eye. And I would say at least a couple times a morning and a couple times in the afternoon, I do make that walk. And the front desk team is trained to review, well, what's the history of this patient? Are they a good patient? Do they have a history of committing to comprehensive care? Even if they have been out for a while, that happens. Is it a patient that only calls us and comes in when they want a tooth removed? This is the history that I want to know. Is it a patient that made a big commitment prior, ever with us? Are they breakers? Because not all emergencies get treated equally, nor should they. I'm sorry. I reserve my bias towards these factors because I think it's relevant. So a patient that has made a commitment and believed in us versus a patient that only calls us when they have problems, I can tell you who's going to get the quickest appointment in the office. And indeed, when we had that on this morning, it was a patient that had pain on the upper right. We checked his history. This guy had regular care with us. He wasn't perfect, by the way. He was missing posterior teeth, but he is a regular patient, had a crown here and there. I'm not talking about a history of a $20,000 case. And the patient came in, and he had broken the upper right first bicuspid, never had a restoration in it, no endo, no crown, split it right down the middle. Well, guess what? I have an opening till God knows when. I have 2 new patients on this day. At this point, when I walk in, remember, this is due to COVID cancellations. And we had weather the day before. And some patients will use that weather until summertime. I'm not kidding you. We actually had patients 2 days later telling you we're coming in because of the snow, which had been 2 days before, and there was no snow to be found. Because it's not unusual in New Jersey for it to be 19 degrees on one day and 55 2 days later, and everything melted. So I had a lot of openings. So this gentleman comes over, and I'm going to tie in another Lionhearted principle, and that's just being honest and forthright and not jamming things down people's throats. I was aware that I had all afternoon, and I told the patient, so listen, here's your options. And this patient had no gaps between his teeth. He might have had 1 molar, upper first molar on the upper left, but he had no molars on the upper right, just back to his second premolar. And he had busted the first premolar. It was non-restorable. for sure. So I offered him a treatment plan of extraction and doing nothing. That was one of my options. I said, I wouldn't do that if I was you, and I'll tell you why. And I went on to explain his lack of teeth already and the fact that he has no teeth missing between teeth. And ideally, it would be nice to have more posterior teeth, but it would be, if he valued the future of his oral health, I thought it would be a worthwhile investment to replace his tooth. And I said I would do that with an implant. So think about all the things I'm saying to you right now. Every implant dentist listening to me right now knows that the first premolar is a gift. Okay, it's a gift because there's no anatomical structures ever in the way. We almost never have a sinus that's that far anterior. It's just, if you know the skill to, and this patient obviously wasn't sedated. So long story short, it became a treatment plan that I did on the spot. Indeed. Paid, of course. No pressure. I said, look, I have an opening because of what's going on here this week. It's crazy. And when I gave him the recommendation, he said the magic words that you like to hear, and I certainly like to hear, is, whatever you think, Doc, I trust you. I said, well, let Michelle go over the cost of this because it's not inexpensive. And I want to be sure you're comfortable with that. This guy, by the way, was disabled, not in a wheelchair or anything. He had a car accident, got hit by a drunk driver 10 years earlier, so he couldn't work because of chronic ongoing pain in his back. So he didn't have a regular income. And so I filled in my product time with that. And the other two patients I had that day, new patients, did commit to substantial treatment plans. I'll just tell you about one of them, and I'll end with that. One of them was an 86-year-old. Now, you better believe, I hope you're getting this tonight, this 86-year-old had never come to me before. You know why he came to me? Because 20 years ago, I used to lecture to senior adults in senior living communities. I've talked to you about this before. I talked to you about it in ways to connect with your community. And just 2 times a year, one time a year for, I'd say, 5 to 6 years, 20 plus years ago, I used to go to this particular senior living community that they lived like in trailers. I mean, I know this sounds weird, but it was a nice community. It was very upscale, beautifully landscaped. These were nice. They looked like little mini homes. And it was like a 60 and older or whatever it was. I don't remember. And I would go to their social functioning room once a year. And I'd come in with refreshments and just talk to them about good oral health ideas for about 30 minutes. I used to bring my dogs, by the way. I did. I remember, and I'd bring refreshments. And I think I would bring gloves and a mirror and my loops. And I would see a couple people after I gave my presentation. And I had giveaways and stuff. This patient was from that marketing, that connection with the community. And he was 86. And he was losing his front tooth. And his wife was with him. And they remembered me vividly. I kind of, be honest with you, I remember them too. I was shocked that I did. Long story short, I love how I talk to. I said, let me tell you how I look at 86-year-old people. I don't. You're all different. There's 86-year-old people leading nations around the world. There are 66-year-old people that are halfway checked out of this world. And I learned a lesson a long time ago that I don't have the right to assume anything. So here's what I'm going to tell you I would recommend for you. And if it fits in your world, do it. And if it doesn't, we have other options. I gave them a fixed option. I didn't give them an implant option. I give them a regular conventional bridge. I basically based it on this. I said, you're 86 years old, William. It's your front tooth. I swear to God, this is how I talk to him. I said, if it was your back tooth, I probably would just tell you to remove it, let it go. By the way, he had been out of dentistry pre-COVID. And he wasn't that bad, by the way. He didn't have a multitude of caries at all. He needed some perio. This tooth was being lost secondary to traumatic occlusion, lack of posterior teeth, etc. And I decided to recommend a fixed bridge because I said this. Listen, I can make you a flipper in a day, in and out, and it'll look fine. You probably won't be happy with it when it comes to eating. And this, by the way, this gentleman dressed well and his wife dressed well. And I believed that he was fit for an 86-year-old man. And I thought all those signals to me told me I had a patient in front of me that still cares of how he looks and how he represents. And it's a very hard thing to teach because I can't tell you that I would recommend that to every patient in that clinical situation. And I felt very comfortable telling them, if it fit in your budget, take an option that'll allow me to put this back where you won't have to take it in and out. Because I think if that fits in your budget, you would be happier. That's just sincere. And there were some other things, and it was not a small treatment plan. And then the day resulted, there was a couple other things. I'll try to pick this up. I know I always tell you that. Here's the takeaways tonight. Obstacles are really determined by you, and overcoming them are determined by you. Are they not? Did I say one thing here that really wasn't true? That you could prepare before the summertime, before a holiday? That it's a mindset if you give up, if you give in? I used to have one hygiene schedule for 15 years because I just never thought about adding. And the day I decided, you know what, why don't I have 2 hygiene schedules? Well, I have 5 hygienists 41 years later. Not at the same time. I do have 3 at the same time because that's the maximum we're allowed in New Jersey. I don't know if this resonated with you guys tonight. It did to me when I took my notes. Feel free to write to me. I'm in the giving mood. I do, guys. You guys have been very loyal to me. And I really I can't reach out to every single one of you. And not that many of you reach out to me anyway. But most of you, if you give me a few weeks, I can get back and help you in some way. And lots of you listening know that. I hope you keep listening. I hope I keep thinking the Lionhearted podcast is worth it. Thanks a lot. I'm still working on that live lecture possibility. Talk to you guys next week. Have a great week. See you on the Lionhearted.